Okie doke, more coming in, fantastic. And I know we're expecting certain people today. Hope you've all had a good week. Whether you've been implementing anything from all the top tips that Laura's been telling you, be good to hear. Yep, sunny Rome. Doesn't compare to Great Bar. Fantastic. But by all means, pop your company names on here. So I'm hoping that a number of you that have been on the sessions each week have actually connected to each other on LinkedIn and are able to share ideas as well. Still got a few more people coming in. So we'll get those and then we'll get started. Fab, welcome Valerie. Okie doke. One more coming in and we'll get started. Okay. Oh, somebody else, hang on. Right, I'm going to go for it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Philippa Hart from Hart Training and Recruitment. Welcome to our fourth and final digital marketing masterclass. Thank you to my special guest speakers. Speaker, which is Laura, who has been devising all the fantastic content over the last 4 weeks. You'll have noticed we've been recording these sessions. I have sent an email out with a link to all the recordings, but if you've not got that, check out Laura's website, Sweet Digital, as she's got all the presentations and the information on there as well. Okay, Laura is going to be going through this section and we're having a breakout group towards the end. But if you've got questions as we go through, because I know there's a lot of information that Laura talks about, and if there's anything specific you want to be asking her or Chris, by all means pop it in the chat group and I'll make sure that Laura gets asked that question. Okay, also welcome my colleague Leanne, who specialises in marketing recruitment at Hart Recruitment. So any queries, by all means speak to Leanne. And finally, we've got Annie's support. Annie is my colleague, so if you've got any issues, technical, just message Annie and she'll hopefully sort you out. So without further ado, I think I should pass over to Laura for her final presentation.
Hey everybody, how you getting on? Busy weeks. So for the final one, we wanted to talk a little bit brand awareness. We started talking about tracking in the first week and analytics. We moved on to Google Ads and how that can help to bring traffic in. Last week we spoke about social advertising, particularly on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, and how we can use that to drive traffic and drive awareness. But today we wanted to round it all off by talking about your brand and how other ways that you can build brand awareness that don't necessarily require you to have an advertising budget to be able to do it. So we're going to hit on why your brand's important, looking at actually your branded search result. So I don't know the last time you Googled your brand name, but talking about how important that is to be able to kind of control what shows for that. And then some PR tips and things that you can do to get some PR coverage for your brand without actually spending a penny, to be honest. So why is your brand actually so important? Well, the reality is people will Google you when they're making a buying decision. And that's regardless of whether you're B2B or B2C. People want to see what your brand shows up for on Google. They want to see the reviews about your brand and get a feel for, what social accounts do you have? Have you had any news about you? So the first thing people will do is Google you. So, here's an example of just Googling ourselves. So we have our website showing, we have our listing on Yahoo, we have our LinkedIn profile, and on the right, we have our Google My Business listing. So all of this is all information about our brand that people can see when they search for us. And a few months back, I ran a poll on Twitter and I wanted to know actually how many negative articles about a brand does it take to turn you off? And it really wasn't many, one or two was enough to turn somebody off purchasing or working with a brand. And it ties into what Philippa was saying last week about how, having a negative interview experience with somebody can turn you off from working with that brand or buying from them. So that word of mouth and the opinion of others can have a real play in people working with you in future, and the business value that you have. And when we look at the search results page for most brand names, 7 out of 10 of the listings that come up are either directories like Yale, their review websites, so you Trustpilot, TripAdvisor, Glassdoor, depending on all the industry that you're in, and social media sites. The remaining 3 to 4 could be your website, or they could be news articles about your brand. 2 of those elements we can really control what shows for, and we can make sure that everything that's showing is very positive towards our brand and has a really positive sentiment. And those are your listings and your social media profiles. The most important listing that you should be considering is your Google My Business listing. These are free at the moment. There is rumors that Google's going to start charging for them, but right now they're free. And they allow you to put imagery of your company. You can obviously put your logo in, all your contactable information, your website link as well. You can include reviews about the brand, products that you sell, services that you offer. You can link directly to bookings, menu. If you're a restaurant, bookings could be either a table booking, or it could also be a demo booking if you're B2B, photos, blog posts that you shared, and also you can answer questions that your customers have, as they can ask them in the listing, and you can answer it for them. With your products and services, you can even add a link straight to those pages. So on our example, we have a suite for every one of our services. So if you want tech, if you're looking at influencer marketing, I love Hart's one, the learn more button here takes you directly to our influencer page. So you're getting deep links to your relevant products and services on this listing, and it can evolve over time. So the more you update it, the better value this listing has. And it can also help whether you show in the maps. So, sometimes on Google, you might do a search for a plumber near me, or in our case, you might search for an SEO agency, Birmingham. You'll get a certain number, usually 3 to 4 listings will show up straight away on the maps. The more you update your Google My Business listing, the more frequently you're putting posts through it, you're updating your services, you're answering people's questions, and you're keeping your about section refreshed, the more likely you are to show in that pack. There's some of the features that help with that too, such as having reviews and positive reviews, and you can advertise there as well. But as a fundamental, get your Google My Business listing, keep it updated, and make sure it's filled out nicely. And straight away, that's a really large panel, particularly on mobile devices, that you're controlling exactly what is shown about your brand and exactly what's said. And this link, which obviously we'll share this afterwards, is where you can go to sign up to get your profile if you don't already have one. There's also many other listing websites. So if you think Yellow Pages, Yelp, there's local newspapers. So, like Birmingham Live and Birmingham Post have business directories on there. 192, Thompson Local, Bing have their own version of the Google listing we've just gone through, and so do Apple for Apple Maps. So you want to sign up to all of these and keep track of the logins that you use, and obviously the passwords that you set for it, and make sure that you keep them up to date. But all the information in there is information you're providing and that you want people to see about your brand, down to the description and the imagery that's used in there. So own them all and control that narrative of what people are reading, because these sites do rank for brand names. So when someone's Googling your brand, it's highly likely that one of these is going to show up in those results. With your social profiles, put your link to your website in your bio and in your about section on your social profiles. If there's anything you do today, go and do that. because that will help your social profiles to rank for your brand name. And also just keep them updated. And this doesn't need to be doing 3-4 posts a day or anything like that. Even just doing a couple a week just to keep them tied over is more than enough to keep them refreshed so that they continue ranking for your brand name. Just be considerate, and I know Philippa will have much more to say on this actually, of your team's social presence and their profiles, because your team members can rank for your brand name too, particularly with their LinkedIn profiles, because of the way that LinkedIn profiles are optimized. It has the person's name and the company that they work for in the meta title, which is a key part that Google reads. So if your teams are connected to your company on their social profiles and obviously state that they work there, you might just want to be considerate about what they're posting online and how that may reflect on your brand, for if they are ranking for your brand's name. Reviews are really important as well, and we can't control them, and we can't control people putting negative reviews. We can ask people for sure to put reviews on who we know have had a really good experience with us. But if you do receive negative reviews, it's really important to respond to them, because even though it's not the best sentiment on your brand if somebody's put a bad review, the fact that you've taken the time to respond to it flips that sentiment and does show it slightly positively. So if someone is searching for your brand name and there's reviews on your Google My Business or your Trustpilot ranks and it's got a low review score on it, if someone does click it, the fact that they can then see that you've taken the time to go through and respond to everybody does work in your favor. But a few little tips to bear in mind when responding to reviews. First of all, have a deep breath. If you need to go and get a cup of tea and come back, definitely do it. But be honest, try and stay upbeat and positive in the response as well. Don't finger point at the reviewer, even if they were in the wrong. Just try and provide the context around the situation, keeping it very factual. Take accountability where you are in the wrong and offer a resolution, but definitely remain professional. I know sometimes we see in the press examples of where a business owner has gone on a bit of a tirade back on a review, and whilst that does drive press for them, I wouldn't recommend that as the standard go-to approach, because it can work against you in the long run and kind of turn people off. So just keep it really friendly and positive. The reality is that negative PR, as I'm sure we've all seen when we've read something about a brand that we don't like, it can really knock your perception of them. But negative PR can rank for your brand as well. So if I'm taking the example of Skinny Jabs, which is a weight loss jab that's been promoted by a number of celebrities over the years, when you Google Skinny Jab, 3 of the results on the first page are quite negative, and they're news articles about the jabs and the worrying risks, the dangers associated with it. Is it too good to be true? So this is the kind of stuff that can actually turn you off from wanting to purchase the product, because you're seeing here that it's dangerous, there's risks involved with it, all of this. And you don't want that shown when someone Googles your brand, because negativity does get more attention, which Tesla is a classic one for having loads of negative press around them. I mean, one of the questions in the people also ask box is if it's overvalued. Nobody really wants their brand associated with being overvalued. And as we saw, it only takes 2 articles and 1 in some people's case to turn them off wanting to purchase from that brand. So this is where it becomes really important to think about your brand, think about what's ranking for it, and put the work in to make sure that everything that shows on the first page of Google, at the very least, when people search for you, is positive. We want to control it. And one of my favorite ways to control it is with positive press. And everything I'm going to run through won't cost you anything to do it other than your time and the value of time. So the first thing is that journalists often need quotes for their stories, and they'll tweet about it. So if you do use Twitter, definitely look at the hashtags journo request, PR request, and blogger request. These hashtags are where you'll find that quite often journalists will just put a quick tweet out being like, I need a comment from a sex therapist, or I'm looking for a comment on Brexit from a property angle. The only thing is you do need to get back to them really quickly to be able to get the opportunity. If you see it and it was posted maybe 3-4 hours ago, you're probably too late for it. So what we do is we use TweetDeck to help with this, and it's free. It's a free tool that you just connect your Twitter account to. And what you can do is you can set up columns for certain hashtags. So you can keep TweetDeck kind of open in the background, have a column for journo request, a column for blogger request, a column for PR request. And every time a new one comes in, it just comes to the top of the column. So you can just keep checking in on it. If you do have budget, there are some really great paid tools you can use for it. So one that we use is a tool called Response Source. And this actually puts journo requests directly into our inbox. And it goes a lot broader than just what you see on Twitter. Like, journalists are actively subscribed to it. And if they need something, they fire it straight through there. There's also paid for journo request platforms that you can use, as well as like Cision has a journo request function, and I believe Roxhill does as well. So there are a few paid variations on it, but looking at it just from a complete free perspective, Twitter is the best place to go for this and monitoring those hashtags. And the beauty of it is you can secure some top-notch coverage just like these. So we got coverage in GQ magazine for a client that sold wine. We work with a mortgage client who are in the Metro. Travel Weekly was for a travel client, and the printer coverage in the Sun was for a ID company that we work with who do a lot of stuff with printing. So all of these pieces of coverage came just from responding to the journalists when they had the request and giving them the quote from the company. So again, this is helping if your brand has some negative PR, or the branded search result has some things in there that aren't super positive towards them. All this kind of coverage helps to get the rankings increased of not only your pages on your website, but then these can start to rank as well for your brand. So all of this really does help to kind of change the perception and keep the perception positive when people are searching for you. Think about your business and any successes you have that are worth shouting about. It could be an acquisition. It could be some charity work that you've done. Do you have any really quirky, unusual products that you want to promote? I mean, a few months ago, we were promoting a Tiger King dildo for a client. That definitely comes into unusual products. Did you win any awards recently? Hit any milestones? Have you got some new team members join you? All of this can make really lovely releases to give to your local press. And there's probably 5 or 6 different publications locally in each area on average that you can kind of hit this out to. The most important thing is to research and find the right journalist. So start on the website. You know, if you're looking to try and get something in, Birmingham Live, Birmingham Mail, for instance, go on their website and find out who's writing about your industry, who's writing about business, who's writing about acquisitions. And that's the journalist that you need to then contact. Some journalists do have their contact information on the website. Others have it on their Twitter profiles. But if you can't find it, there's a free piece of software called hunter.io that you can use, and that can help to find email addresses for people. There are paid for media database tools that you can also use. So like Roxhill is our preferred one that we use at Suite, but there's loads of other ones out there that will help you to get that information. Pull your story together. You know, what is the story? Is it that you've opened a new office? Have you brought some awesome talent in? Have you got some client wins? Write your story up and email it over to the journalists. But a piece of advice is that don't use attachments in your email because they can fall into people's spam or filters. So if you have got a press release, put it in the body of the email. And if you do have any imagery, include it in a like a Google Drive or a Dropbox link with it. because then there's no attachment, so the email won't hit any of the spam filters for anybody. And you can get really cool coverage from it. So our client Jublo moved to a new office a couple of months ago, and they're based up north. So we put out a release with them about the move. We got the office space called Platform involved as well, and they gave us a quote for the piece. We had a quote from the owner of Jublo in the piece too about the move, and we put it out to all the northern publications and business publications about it, and it even got on the front page of the physical, which was really nice. So you don't need a big shiny story all the time to be able to get a nice little piece of coverage for your brand. But because this has the word Jublo in every one of them, if you start searching for their brand, some of these come up. So we're putting all this positive news about their growth in when anybody searches their brand, which is brilliant. Do you have any offers or special discounts that your company is providing? So not just standard, we're doing 10% off for Black Friday. Think specifically about, do you have discounts for students? Do you have discounts for NHS, for special forces, as examples? Each of these actually have their own websites where those discounts can be listed. So obviously the British Forces one. VOGO is for NHS and staff nurses. Save the Student is just for students. Student Crowd for students. If you have specific discounts for some industries and certain job roles that people have, you can submit your discounts and offers to these sites or get in contact with the sites, and you'll have a page then dedicated to you on their website with what your offer is, what the discount is, and some information about the brand. Again, this can start ranking for your brand name for if anybody does search for you. It's a really nice way to just get not only a few more sales through the door for you, but also get that kind of recognition and positivity. So contact them and ask them if they will include you on their list. Now, this creating a news story from scratch that's not about a brand acquisition or any of the things we talked before is the biggest time consuming one, but it can have huge value if you do it. So there's a few examples I'm going to show you, which are stories that you might have seen in the papers over the past week or so that people have done. So this one was in the Daily Mail and was about the most listed after honeymoon destinations, and it was done by Kuoni. There's this awesome piece from Spa Seekers who looked at the most haunted hotels and spas that you can stay at that the Daily Star covered. And there's a piece about how you can COVID-proof your Christmas shopping and a saving that was in the Sun. Now, actually, all of these stories were created purely for PR. The whole point of the story is to get links and to get coverage in national publications that link back to the website, because those links will help to improve your SEO and help your rankings to increase. And also, if somebody searches for the brand name, these stories will appear. So the whole point of these stories is purely for PR and SEO. And the reality is there are loads of free data sources online that we can use to get information from to help us create these kinds of stories. So Google Trends will show you how the number of searches has changed over a specific time period for a phrase you put in. So if you put COVID in, for instance, you'll see it shoots up. The same if you did like PPE or the word unprecedented, like that shot up. So people can make stories about trends and how things have changed over the year or how things have spiked up. So when lockdown first started, there was a few stories around words to do with COVID, like, new normal, unprecedented, all of those, and how their usage has suddenly shot up. And that was purely from Google Trends data. Land registry, exactly what it says on the tin. It can give you information about houses, property developments, how much has been spent, those kind of information. Social media profiles, so Pinterest, Instagram likes, Instagram hashtag usage, how many Pinterest, the themes of things that have been pinned on boards. You could also look at Twitter hashtags, LinkedIn hashtags, all of that information. The Office of National Statistics, which is run by the government, that publishes reports consistently. You can get information about work, about pensions, about deaths, births. You can even break it down into areas, you can break it down into industries, and you can almost create your own Excel sheet from the ONS. And when you kind of tick what information you're looking for, and you can pull together your own statistics, and it will give you statistics usually for at least 5 to 10 years going back, so you can do some really nice comparisons with that data. Spotify is wonderful to use if you want to see like number of streams of songs, number of streams of artists, how frequently is an artist included in certain playlists, or how frequently is a song included in certain playlists. SimilarWeb compares websites, so it can give you some really good information about if you're looking at data to do with specific websites. And then freedom of information requests, or FOIs. This is where you can email councils to ask for a really specific piece of data. So for example, we've just emailed all the councils in the country to ask about some data to do with potholes and the amount of money spent on pothole repairs, the number they've done, the worst roads in their constituency. And the council have to give you a response on this. The only downside is it takes 28 working days minimum to get these responses in. So freedom of information requests are much more of a long-term project than, say, a Google Trends piece, for instance, because you can get that data instantaneously. But the data you get from an FOI is unique to you. So that's a really key benefit of that, is that no one else has that data. So it's an exclusive that you can push out. You can also get data from commissioning surveys, but surveys do have costs associated with them unless you run your polls on your social media profiles. But realistically, you need at least 500 responses for the data to be deemed worthy, I suppose, by a journalist. But you kind of price-wise for a 500-person survey with splits by age, gender, location, you're probably looking at about £500 on average for that. But it's a lot of data that you can probably get multiple angles from. So it's weighing up the value proposition of that. But if we go back to the 3 pieces and actually how they were collated, you can see that the Kuoni travel piece, they just used Pinterest data for this. So there was no cost involved to pull this piece together. They looked at the number of pins specific locations had, and the inclusion of those locations on Pinterest boards of a theme, so weddings, honeymoons, etc. Then they created a top 20 list from that information that they'd collated, got all the graphics and imagery for all the areas, which you can get from Shutterstock, or you could use actually the Pinterest posts themselves for it. And what's really nice about this is how visual the piece is. So journalists really like stories that are visual, very shareable on social, or keep users on the site for a prolonged period of time. So anything that's a list that people have to kind of scroll down and read, that's going to tick the longevity piece. Anything that's this visual will definitely tick the social box for them. So it costs these guys absolutely nothing to put this data together, yet it's got coverage on the Daily Mail and numerous other places. For the Spa Seekers one, where they looked at the creepiest or spookiest hotels and spas, they just looked at the historical information for each of the spas and hotels, which helped to give them an insight into the spooky history. And again, then they've collated it into a nice list with whichever one had the most spookiest history at the top and kind of rolled down. But what's great about this is that it's really on theme for the fact that Halloween's in like 10 days, is it? So it's a really good kind of seasonal piece that they could then go and update every year if they wanted to, and keep pushing it out. And the brand Spa Seekers has got all the recognition for collating this data and all the image credits as well. So again, if somebody searches for spa seekers at the moment, they'll see this piece come up because it's really relevant and it's just been published, I think in the Star and probably about 30, 40 other publications as well. If you want to think outside the box when you're looking at ways to get some positive PR, think about things that your customers will be interested in, but what's readable, what's a journalist going to care about as well. So you could have a really lovely initiative going, but what's the hook for a journalist that makes what you're doing different to what everybody else is doing? If you use that when you're thinking of your PR pieces, you can generate yourself quite a bit of publicity that really helps that branded search result for when people are looking at your brand to glow and to show really, really good pieces. And it also helps with your brand awareness in general and your referral traffic, because if someone does come through from, the Daily Mail, the Sun, that will show in your Google Analytics under referrals. So you'll be able to see how much traffic that drives for you. And if you actually generate any leads or conversions from it too. So it's a really nice way of just opening up the brand in a different aspect. And I wanted to show you that you really don't have to spend a lot or any physical money to be able to achieve that. It's very much the cost is time in it. And the more time you put into it, the more you'll get from it. So I think now's the time for a little breakout. And I thought it'd be really nice to just think of an idea each, or help each other think of an idea of something that would be a really nice positive news piece for each other. And I'll pop this back so that we can share.
Great. Okay, so we'll just pop into a 10-minute breakout group. And if each group comes up with a question perhaps for Laura for when we come out, that would be, using her time very effectively and to share ideas, that would be great. So Annie, send us off into our breakout groups, please.
Hi, Philippa.
Hello, how are you?
Not bad, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm fine, thank you. Are you all having bad hair days?
Yeah, I am actually. Sort of curly all over the place. So, yeah, he's not actually, but well, neither is she. But yeah.
Oh, hi, Jessica.
Hello.
We've
Okay.
never met, have we?
No, I was on the last one, but
Yeah.
not the first two. Can't remember the gentleman that I was speaking to, but yeah, it's been really good actually. Yeah, interesting. Nice to kind of learn. 'Cause to be honest, I'm completely new to this sort of thing, so interesting to see different ways.
Are you at Tropicana?
Yeah.
Yay, good old Tropicana. Oh, we've known you guys for a long time.
Yeah, I'm so happy here, honestly. It's lovely place to work.
Yeah, good. So, and hey, Tom, sun shining on you.
I know it is. It's I've undershot the curtains. It's very bright. It gets to the stage about 3 o'clock. It's too much to deal with. But yeah, this is the first one I've been able to join. Unfortunately, I've been on annual leave, and other Thursdays haven't been quite so good to us. But no, really helpful. So we're going to be doing a new project in the next few months, promoting the West Midlands region overseas. So all of these sort of things are very useful, just to sort of get the general background from Laura in terms of some of the work that she's been doing already.
Yeah, great. Well, make sure you get the links are on her website, actually, easy to sort of catch up on it. But so
PR, which is very helpful actually, with all the various sessions that have been held already, which we'll delve into later. Yeah, thank you.
Great stuff. So ideas on PR.
So, well, PR for me, I didn't mainly deal with like the social media side of things. So it was quite interesting for me to see, about how Laura mentioned about obviously them stories on certain like websites were completely just for the purpose of advertisements. I was trying to kind of relate it back to Tropicana and think like what I could do. So do you think that sort of thing would be relevant for like myself? I was trying to think how I could kind of
Do you want to tell the other two what Tropicana do?
Yeah, so basically, sorry, I should have probably said.
That's fine.
We sell like health and fitness supplements and products, like you can imagine, like proteins, stuff like that, really, all across the UK. It's like gyms, businesses, so it is mainly B2B rather than B2C. I've only been here a few months, so fairly newish, but I suppose the social media side of things can go hand in hand with, she spoke about the Google thing that was free at the moment, like the advertisement when they put it into Google and what comes up. I think it'd be good for me to kind of focus on like what the reviews are there, because I've not actually Googled it myself, because that's what a lot of people will see. Businesses that Google Tropicana, that'll be the first thing that they see. So it'd be good to kind of be more interactive on that, because I don't even know at the moment if people do respond. Like, see if there is any complaints or anything. I think that will make a massive difference, and just updating that all the time.
Because your industry is a lot to do with body image, isn't it?
Yeah.
And building up. So I suppose that, I mean, you posting all these pictures and stories of those poor people that stand there with their rolls of fat and then 2 months later have got their six-pack.
Transformation, yeah.
They've had this protein powder.
Yeah,
they haven't eaten anything for 2 months, but you've got a great platform, I'd have thought, with stories and
that's
people's
what
eyes.
Yeah. It's good to kind of because last week's session especially was good to see ways I can advertise, because I mean, I'm doing stories and posts at the moment, especially with Halloween coming up, like focusing on maybe discounts and things like that for some of the brands. But it's just finding the best ways to keep it relevant, because you do with Halloween coming up, you want to do something Halloweeny, and with Black Friday coming up, you want to make sure that really customers are going to see what we're putting out there.
Do you do competitions?
Yeah, we're doing a few competitions. I'm doing one at the moment. So like when we bring a new brand on board, like to try and like see if there's an interest there, we'll do a competition, create a bit of excitement for the launch. But for Halloween, we'll definitely be doing some, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been able to capitalise on lockdown, if you like? I mean, I know certainly when I've read surveys about how people aren't doing an exercise and they're putting on lockdown weight and stuff, is there anything you can potentially exploit?
Well, when I first joined in August, they did say to me that, in fact, lockdown had been really quite busy at Tropicana. So I think a lot of people had probably invested time into doing like home workouts, things like that. So in that way, it probably has benefited them, because more people will be interested in that sort of product.
Lockdown. That's what we were calling it. I've got 2 teenage boys, and when they went back to football, my husband said, I've never seen it like the team. I mean, they're only 15, 16-year-olds. They've been hit by lardy lockdown. And they're youngsters, never mind the rest of us. But yeah, having themes like that is great.
Yeah.
Mm.
You capitalise. Sorry, go on. Sorry, Philippa.
I was going to say with you then, did you say that you were promoting abroad?
We will be, yeah. I mean, we have done, I mean, in terms of the work I do, it'd be around sort of promoting the West Midlands as a tourism destination, which has been very, very difficult the last 6 months, given that we're just not getting certainly international visitors, and that's what you'd expect, isn't it, really, from the fact that people aren't travelling over here and Visit Britain, who are sort of one of our major national partners, have been talking about how low visitor numbers have been and how much money they're likely to lose. But I mean, we're looking ahead to really big moments in time, if you like, a City of Culture in Coventry and then the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So we're hoping to rely on those 2 events to really drive visitors to come in from various sort of international locations. And so in the coming months we'll be looking to put together a programme to promote this region and the City of Birmingham elsewhere, overseas, whether it be in places like Australia to India to Canada and America as well. So we're going to be working very closely with various different media outlets, broadcasters in a lot of these international territories to hopefully profile Birmingham and the West Midlands in a positive light. Ideally, all this COVID and pandemic will be behind us and we can start looking ahead. But it's a very tricky time at the moment, just to not be able to predict the time, is it? To know, like, when can we start, welcoming people back to the city and the region, because there doesn't seem to be an idea at the moment, does there, in terms of when it's all going to be resolved. So we're sort of in a bit of a limbo at the moment in terms of when we can start promoting ourselves. But the real big thing that we're going to have as an advantage compared to maybe some other areas in the region, around the country, sorry, is the fact that we've got these massive events and championships coming up with the Commonwealth Games in 2022. So I think a lot of the stuff we say is how it's the biggest sporting championships that the country will have had since the London Olympics, and it's just about trying to capitalise on that, really. So we're doing a lot of work.
Was so interesting for me? Well, I think I was more mortified, actually. 2 years ago, we were abroad in, I think it was Crete. We were in Crete, and I ordered a drink at the bar, and this young man said to me, "Peaky Blinders."
Yeah.
And I thought, all the years that I've been abroad, I mean, I went travelling when I was in my 20s, Birmingham, what was Birmingham? All the people knew of was London and Manchester.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness, has Peaky Blinders seriously put Birmingham on the map? But it was fantastic. He actually thought it was the best. I mean, it's obviously, if you've seen it, with the violence and everything, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But how something like that brought it on the map. But we've got our 1 minute warning. Tom, I'll put you in touch with a friend of mine. Vanessa's been on a couple of these sessions, and she works at the BBC, but she's working at the moment for National Geographic, and she worked for the New Zealand Tourist Board, based here in the UK, and then she went to America for 4 years. So I'll just put you in touch with each other, because tourism and hospitality, she was marketing director for Intercontinental.
Oh, wonderful.
For you. So she's been on these sessions and learning lots, I'm glad to say. So I'll put you two in touch.
It's incredible how much of a boost the TV program's given us, to be honest. All the various conversations I've had with international tourist officers, they're saying that they all know about Peaky Blinders. It's brilliant. It's great PR for us, despite the violence.
Yeah, despite the violence, we've gone on the map. So, well, is everyone back? I don't think we've lost anyone, Laura. Okay. We had a really interesting group, but I don't know, I'm sure everybody else did. Has anybody else got any feedback or questions for Laura?
And we came up with a question in our group. The question we came up with was, with regards to PR, would you say PR is for every industry or just certain industries? Because you do get some industries that are scared to use PR because the industry's got such bad publicity already. So would you then say that PR is actually tailored to every industry, or is it stronger for certain industries?
It's definitely for every industry. I mean, I won't lie, e-commerce is easier to do PR for than B2B, because you have a product, or you can create a funny product like the Tiger King dildo. I mean, that was just hilarious in itself. But if it's an industry that does tend to have negative press, so particularly, utilities gets a lot of negative press a lot of the time, think outside the box with it. So I saw a really awesome piece the other week from a heating supplier, and they did a piece about which student landlords were rated the worst in the country, which obviously ties in well because every house needs heating. So it ties in with their brand, but it was just really newsworthy because of the fact that, well, they're slagging off landlords, and everybody likes to moan about landlords. So I think when it's a difficult industry, that's where you've got to think about what will people share on social. I kind of call it like the Lad Bible test almost. Like, if you think this is something that Lad Bible and the Sun might be talking about, it's a good piece to push for PR if you're doing it for that reason and to get those kind of links. If you just want some trade acknowledgement, then definitely keep it more business focused and then hit up your trade publications for it. What industry are you in out of interest? And
I'm looking. I was in manufacturing, then got made redundant a couple of months ago with COVID, but I've worked in a few different industries, and that's what I was speaking to Leanne about earlier, is that, for instance, when I worked at a company called Euro Car Parts, it was the motor industry, and the motor industry are so big on PR. They spend like thousands, hundreds of thousands on PR. It's just so big to the motor industry. And I went for an interview before, and I remember that the first thing I asked for was what PR agencies have I worked with, and that was in the motor industry again. What PR agencies have I worked with, what I've done with them, what contacts I've got, and whether then like you got other industries, for instance, I know in manufacturing when I was working, it's not as heavy on that. So they'll touch on it kind of like once or twice a year or something, do a piece. That's about it. So it goes from like one extreme to the other.
Yeah, you're right. You can get, for manufacturing, you can get a lot more from journal request side. So we have a couple of clients in manufacturing and kind of warehousing logistics, and they get much more from the journal request side of things and giving comments to industry articles or doing like guest blogging rather than a big PR piece. You kind of do individual pieces for that specific publication. That tends to work better for them. But yeah, peaks and troughs. But yeah, auto, yeah, definitely huge on PR they are.
They love it, absolutely love it.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's so competitive. Like, it's the best way for them to get noticed.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Anyone else? In our group, we talked about competitions and actually how positive competitions are. But we were also talking about promoting Birmingham, and I was sharing my experience of being abroad and Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
Which I was mortified when I ordered a drink and this young man said to me, Peaky Blinders, thinking my accent wasn't that strong. But how actually Peaky Blinders has brought very positive PR to the Midlands.
It has. I mean, there's the mural, isn't there, in Jury Quarter? I think it was Elevate did the development, and they did a mural of Tommy Shelby, and the guy that played him actually came and took pictures with it, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, Peaky Blinders is a huge association with Birmingham. I think that's nice, but that's things that you can jump on. You know, if there is pop culture to do with where you're from, you can jump on that in PR. Or if, you know, when Peaky Blinders next season comes back, you can do a piece that ties into it. Like when James Bond's released next year, I guarantee you will see loads of pieces coming out about the nation's favourite James Bond car, nation's favourite actor that's played Bond, maybe even about Bond's eco-friendliness and does he do less miles now than he used to. And every single one of those will be a PR agency doing it for links and coverage, because we'll probably be doing it as well.
Do you ever think there's a certain film where it could end up with bad PR if you associate yourself?
Yeah, probably ones that are a bit on the line. So I know there was like Netflix released a really controversial film called Cuties a few months ago. And it was controversial because it was to do with sexualization of children. It was like young girls doing really overtly sexual cheerleading dances, and it was a tough, hard-hitting film. That was the whole point of it. But I think if you associate yourself with things that are a bit on the line, that could backfire against you. But it also depends on the brand, because like we work with a brand that sells sex toys, so actually for them getting involved in like 50 Shades of Grey and things like that works perfectly, but it won't work for yourself because there's no tie, you know. So it's very much about the brand and how far the brand want to go and push the label on things.
Yeah, interesting. Not that I'm now thinking of Jessica at Tropicana, because they do protein, and so I always think of it as the bodybuilding and that world.
Literally, like even when I first got the job, people that I previously worked with, I'd say, oh, they'd ask me where I was going to. I'd be like Tropicana. They'd be like, oh, like my boyfriend goes there. He's a bodybuilder. Like there's like so many people that like this is quite well known, I think, in the area for just this sort of thing, really, just like the whole health and fitness and looking after yourself.
Yeah, huge industry for PR.
Yeah,
fitness is there's so much you can do on it. I mean, if you just look at what Grenade does, like they put so much time and effort into PR.
Yeah, and they're one of our best sellers as well. and it just shows really so popular.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with looking at what competitors have done and taking a bit of inspiration from it. Like, obviously don't copy it, but there's nothing wrong with seeing that they did a campaign which worked really well 2 years ago and doing an updated version of that, because there's a reason it did well.
Yeah, that's true.
But
And
yeah,
don't always reinvent the wheel.
yeah, and you'll notice it. I think I'm probably more aware to it because I look at pieces now and you just know that's a PR piece, but you do start to notice trends. So there was a trend of dream jobs campaigns. So you keep seeing every other week, you know, you can be paid to sit in your pajamas and watch Netflix, and that was put out by a lingerie company. Or you can be paid to sit and eat a roast dinner, and that's put out by Aunt Bessie's. So there is really big trends with types of stories, and currently it's you can stay in a, so you'll see pieces right, but like, oh, you can stay in a Christmas themed hotel room, you can stay in a chocolate orange themed room, and it's just people, you're just making a really cool story because you know that people like chocolate orange, there's an interest there, Christmas is coming, there's an interest there. So it's just that's going outside the box really, but you can get so much coverage for it if you do it. I mean, we got like 80 odd pieces of coverage for an auto piece the other week, and it didn't cost us a lot of money to pull the data together, but the coverage they've got from it is fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. One last question from anybody? Good stuff. Clear as mud. Okay, right, to finish off, you can have all these initiatives, do all this fabulous work with PR and your brand and investment, and ruin the whole lot with your recruitment processes. You knew I had to bring it back to recruitment in the end, but I do just want to highlight how, and I did mention this in one of the previous sessions, but, you know, do make sure that when you have your colleagues or your HR department are running a recruitment campaign, how they're actually looking at communicating with those candidates. I think it's really relevant at the moment as well because of the volume of CVs that are being sent into companies. So we are finding on average for any vacancy that we're putting out there that we're probably getting 400 plus CVs at the moment. And so you imagine out of all those people that don't hear from a company, and we've got some individuals on here who are applying for jobs, it is really disheartening when you don't have any form of response from a client. But then it's about the timescales and process. And when anyone starts a recruitment campaign, we're always saying to people, plan your timescales, know when you're going to give feedback for CVs, know when your first interview is, know when your second interview is. It doesn't matter if it's going to be 2 months or 2 weeks, as long as candidates are aware, because it is a massive PR piece. And we know candidates that have turned down jobs because they've had to wait too long. And what's a bit fascinating at the moment is we know of some companies who are insisting on seeing people face to face, which in this COVID situation, I actually think is unrealistic for all interviews to take place face to face. Consider how technology can help you and your time so that you don't have to be in an office at a particular time and a candidate doesn't have to travel. You know, online interviewing is fantastic. So don't ruin everything Laura's been telling you over the last few weeks by one of your colleagues not doing a professional job with the recruitment process. So, although this is the final in the digital marketing masterclasses, I'm sure you've all connected up to Laura. As I said before, on Sweet Digital, you'll see previous videos of those sessions. What else are Hart running? Well, IR35 does not sound as exciting as what Laura's been telling us, but it may cost your companies a small fortune. So if you need to find out information about IR35, which is employing or engaging with contractors The rules are changing from April. So I've got a super lady who is an expert in IR35 from a HR and legal perspective. She's running a free session on the 12th of November. And then our other master series, which is creating a culture of flexibility, is all about people still working from home, motivating and engaging your direct reports, recruiting individuals when they're at home, and even starting those people at home, because it looks like a lot of offices are not going to be going back until well into the new year. So how do you look at recruiting those new people, but also performance managing current members of staff and retaining? And you know what? There's been a lot of negativity of redundancies, but also a number of companies have restructured. And what will happen is it will pick up. We've got lots of businesses we're working with who are really busy and will be recruiting, but you need to be retaining your staff as well. So the Creating a Culture of Flexibility Master Series, I've got special guests coming along. I know some of you may have come to the odd ones, but we're repeating those in November, from November the 18th. And we've got plans then for more of these types of sessions right the way through to accounts. So I don't know how interesting they're going to be, but they're going to be in February time once everybody's got their self-assessments in. So I think that is, oh, and I haven't even promoted the fact that we're doing interview techniques workshops as well online, which are bespoke to companies, or we may well have public courses. I've always run those for the last 10 years, but we've now brought that online with communication skills and influencing as well. So lots going on the Hart training side of the business. Thank you for all attending. Good to see you all, and stay in touch with us, but good luck with everything you're doing and stay safe. Thank you. Thanks, Laura, as well.